Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Undergrowth session. Undergrowth is a green tea. It's a green tea from Anhui Province. By the end of the session, you're going to understand why we call it Undergrowth. You'll also have an understanding, a deeper understanding of the complexities of green tea in Anhui Province. But let's start with shock news. This has been a shocking week for the T family because one of our members, Terry Kim, had an accident in France, a biking accident. Well, the biking accident apparently caused by a heart attack. So there's some good news. The initial reports coming out sounded very gruesome, and actually, each successive piece of news has been better. So the latest piece of news, and it's still a very serious situation, is he's been upgraded and moved into another unit. And that's a good thing because it's not in the most critical situation now. He's coherent, hasn't spoken to anybody stateside, as far as I know, but and when it's available, I'm sure we're going to get a chance to speak to him. Many of you have already sent well wishes. Thank you very much. And we are forwarding those well wishes along. So that's the real important thing that happened this week. And what it makes you think about is how important every single moment is. We talk about being present during appreciating tea, during the making of tea. Well, actually, that can be extended to everything. Being present is really important. Being present and appreciating your surroundings, appreciating your friends and family, just appreciating the privilege of life. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into undergrowth. I'm sure you all have your pens and papers out, or pencils and papers, whatever. You know what I mean? So that you can take notes. We've done three. This will be the third in a series, actually, of six green teas, because we have three more upcoming. Anhui. Anhui Province is very famous for green tea. When did this particular green tea start to come to the market? Nobody knows exactly, but in general, tea from the Yellow Mountains was already famous by the 1800s. It wasn't famous in Europe until about 1876 when it came to Shanghai. Britishers drank it and said, "Oh, we got to have this stuff." And so small packets of it got delivered to Europe, and it was the rage. And I mean really small packets. So it was only elite who were drinking this. Many stories surrounding this tea. So before we get into the actual production of the tea, which would be something you all recognize, let's talk about one of my favorite stories. And it's a story about what happens when you try and take credit for those things you really don't know. So this actually happened in 1876. So the particular magistrate that controlled the county where this tea was grown was demonstrated, or the making of this tea was demonstrated to this magistrate. And what he noticed, which was so unusual, is as the tea was in the cup, a plume of steam came up and it formed a white lotus. Now, of course, some of these stories may be apocryphal, but some actually might be true. Doesn't matter whether it's apocryphal or true, because then something happened further. Another magistrate was visiting, and the original magistrate said, "Hey, if you use this spring water, you'll have this effect." He took it to his place. This was neighboring magistrate. It had that effect. And there was somebody there who was a more minor official who thought, I see opportunity. Don't you love it when you see opportunity? I wonder what this official did. Well, he took some of this tea. What he didn't take was the spring water. Yeah, any old water will do. This is a lesson, by the way. The underlying theme of this story, well, there's several underlying themes, but the first one is tea is 99.9% water. So if you aren't using the best water, you're not going to get the best result. Period. End of story. So this guy got an appointment with the emperor and said, I have something really special to show you. Because he wanted to curry favor, get a promotion, become rich and famous. And so the emperor sends for him. He comes. He says, you're going to see this beautiful white blossom. Makes the tea. And because he was using the emperor's water. The emperor wasn't using Yellow Mountain spring water. So, of course, what happens? You all know the story. Emperor looks, hey, I'm waiting for something amazing. You said something amazing. Didn't you say something like a white blossoming lotus? Nothing. Very terrible. Emperor was pretty angry and said, okay, you're about to get a demotion unless you can explain this. And it's going to be worse than an ordinary demotion. So the guy, is, pleading for his case and says, I saw it. And it was in this county at this magistrate's house. So the emperor sends for that magistrate and says, I want a demonstration. And the magistrate says, I got to go back and get the water because you have to have spring water from Yellow Mountain. So that happens. And sure enough, this thing blossoms. So from that moment forward, this tea took on a special importance in the imperial house because it was recognized as being just one of these great flavors and one of these very interesting green teas. The underlying, of course, story about this is you really do have to know your stuff. You can't make up stuff or take highlights. You take highlights and you don't have the whole process. You're going to end up with egg on your face. So this was this story, and I particularly like this story because it is the story about tea. That tea points back to details. If you don't understand the details, if you don't understand the whys and wherefores. So this goes down to simple things. By illustrating it with this water, it also points to the rules of how you make it. You can't just sit, if you're not experienced with a tea, and say, oh, I'm going to make this thing. Well, you can sit and try. But if you don't have some channels and some backgrounds, you're going to have challenges with that. So that's one of my favorite stories from that time. What was the value of this tea? We don't have, and I'm talking about monetary value, by the way, we don't have exact numbers until 1911. In 1911, we have officially recorded that for 35,000 pounds of this tea, it took 25,000 silver pieces, British silver pieces. So in other words, this was quite exclusive and expensive. Fast forward to 2005, and again, in China, in an auction, this particular tea went for about $12,000 for 50 grams. Let's think about that. 12,000 US dollars for 50 grams. So we've heard these stories before. We've heard them about Dragon Ball. Oh, 50,000 to 100,000 per pound. Yeah, we've heard these stories before. Scarlet Road, big numbers. This tea, big numbers. So for those of you who are here this morning, you're probably asking yourself, well, why haven't I heard of this tea before? The fact that we cover so many teas doesn't mean that the whole history is there in front of you. It's exposed a lot through us, but this is really tea, and the development of tea in China has a lot of details. And there are so many teas, it's hard to keep track of all of them. And hence, as we go through these sessions, I always try and pick and choose the fun and interesting parts of this. Was this tea listed in the 1950s in China as one of the top 10 teas? A corollary tea related to this was. And the price, the production of this tea. All right, so let's back up. Anhui Province. Let's think of where it is in China. All right, central, a little bit north. It's more central than north, right? All right, let's think. What was history? How did history treat Anhui Province in the early 20th century? Not very well. Japanese invaded, they made a mess, war and more war, production lines interrupted, civil war followed, the development of modern China followed. So let's start at the development of modern China. How much of this stuff was being produced at that time? Things had become things. Farm production had become so disrupted that probably not more than 100 pounds of all the tea from this area of Anhui was being produced. It was so bad at some points that equivalent quantities of tea were traded for equivalent quantities of salt, equivalent quantities of rice. In other words, this tea, everybody still knew it was quite valuable, but there just wasn't much of it. And so the farmers at that time, and again, because of disruption and concentration on other projects in terms of modernizing. Because when you get the reins of government, you have to make a lot of decisions. And that means you have to triage. You have to say to yourself, okay, this thing is more important than that thing. Production of rice is more important than production of tea in certain areas, right? You got to feed everybody. So this put the production of this particular tea on kind of a slow mo. And it wasn't until the 80s that it started to take off again. Everybody knew there was good stuff there. And the tea masters, the lineage tea masters, didn't disappear. It was just that there was focus on other things for development. So this gives you a little bit of insight. So you had this period at the beginning of modern China where there was pressure on the tea crop. There weren't enough resources to get that developed fully. I mean, there was still some resources, but not the resources that occurred after the 1980s or that started during the 1980s. Then big resources, because everybody knew this is good. We can make a go of this. And our lineage masters are still here. All right, so what other tea is this related to? But it's different. So let me not say that other name of a tea until I say it's different about 5,000 times. Because the next thing I know is I'm going to hear, oh, this is a cousin of the tea I'm about to name. No, it's not a cousin, although it's grown in small quantities in the same area. So you all are aware of Yellow Mountain Reserve in here. This is grown in the same region. And actually, the pictures I sent you, or that we sent you, are pictures of a group we took up to that area. The actual fields you're looking at are really fields of Yellow Mountain Reserve. But if you look up the hill in those pictures, at the very top of the mountain, it's undergrowth. And it's in small areas. It is a green tea and sometimes gets mistaken for Yellow Mountain Reserve. So this is what we're presenting you today. Remember, what did I say about small craft tea last week when we did Unity? I talked about that as having special characteristics. And just because, in quotes, it's small craft tea doesn't mean it's not gigantic quality, gigantic interestingness. And this is no exception today. So this kind of lays the groundwork for what you're going to have today. This tea from Anhui spread down to Shanghai, spread north, actually, interestingly, and everywhere it went, it became popular. There just wasn't much of it. And it was very expensive, hard to come by, and even popular in Europe. So let's turn the historical clock back for a minute, because there's a thought that Europe only drank red tea during the 1800s. It is most of the tea drinking public only had access to red tea. But for the aristocracy, there was access to this green tea, and it was really connected to the merchants who were stationed in Shanghai, because they knew this stuff. Wow, the red tea we have is really good. Oh boy, is this good too. And that's how that was filtering back to Europe. And that's how it gradually became famous. Because remember, in Shanghai was this international hub. Already by the 1880s, 1890s, you start to get an international feel in Shanghai. So merchants from Paris took back a little bit. Merchants from Sweden took back a little bit. Hey, if it was so good, why were they only taking back a little bit? Because that's all that was available. And then were they delivering it, to the mass market? No, that was getting skimmed off the top by the aristocracy in Europe. And that's why they knew this existed. And most of the rest of the population may have heard of it in Europe, but wasn't able to experience this. So that gives you a little bit of background about this. This always gets associated because in the 1980s, remember, the tin top teas were revisited. And that tin top teas is so deceptive because in the West, we think, oh, okay, everybody had this contest and you had 7,500 varietals out there. Oh, everybody's testing and drinking and so forth. Okay, the top 10. No, that's not how it happened. Top 10, and this relates to what I said a few weeks ago. Remember, this is collective. And so wherever you are on that collective wheel determines where your tea goes. So if you're connected to top people, we love your tea. And all of a sudden, your tea achieves stature. And when it achieves stature, and by the way, this sounds like this is an unfair system. It's not an unfair system. To even get into the halls of the top of that circle, it has to be really, really, really good because, like everywhere, at the top, you're experiencing the best, right? Doesn't matter whether you're in the wine industry, whatever industry. Those who know stuff at the top know what's good and what isn't. Not question. Same thing. All right. I am so happy today to bring forth the tea master because this morning, when she walked through the door, kind of a light preceded her. And this means that whatever happens today will be magic. I love magic. So, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to bring forth Biju, the tea master.
Thank you. 早上好. Yeah. So good morning. Yeah, we do green tea. Yeah. So yeah, okay. This tea from Anhui, yeah, I call the
Undergrowth.
Undergrowth. Yeah, this green tea. So okay, John. Okay.
Normal setup.
Yeah.
For you, it would be 2 cups and a strainer. That's all you really need. Tea tray is extremely helpful, especially if you like to play in the water. But it's not an absolute necessity. Ability to control water temperature is the other key thing. And look at presence of tea master. When she does this, it's always kind of a repeat every time, isn't it? Certain rhythm. Make sure that the cups are heated, absolutely clean. No exceptions.
Jeremy asks, please give production details process.
Please give what?
Production details process.
I will in a minute. Okay, and so pay attention. This is 6 grams. We're going to do this for 3 minutes. And by the way, in China, you talk about production details. There is a detail about this tea that's not production, but it's brewing detail, which is very interesting because the lore of this is it should be done at about 165. Now, if you look at all the famous big tea houses or tea production companies, they fail to give this information. But in the local area, they say, don't exceed that. You get the best flavor. Yeah.
There's a question, the steep hillside terrain where this is grown that the picture shows, is that rare for the tea plants that become in green tea?
So I'm not sure I understand that question. If the question is, because remembering, what makes something green tea? Okay, let me answer it this way. Green tea is a process. It's not a area. It's not a look of the tea plant. It's a process. So if the question is everything in that picture use the green tea process? Answer is yes. If the question implies, oh, can I look at this and know that they're going to use the green tea process? Because every farmer has the opportunity, every production house has the opportunity to say, oh, I'm waking up on the other side of the bed this morning. I'm going to make a red tea. They have that ability to say that, but do they really have that ability to do that? If they're a lineage farmer, the answer is no, because that's not their lineage. Did I capture that correctly? Okay. So an earlier question was about the processing of this. And that's a great question because it goes through normal green tea process. So you got to pick it. Usually there's a morning pick, there's an afternoon pick. The morning pick is processed in the afternoon. The afternoon pick is processed in the evening. So there's a 24/7 aspect to these particular farms. And it's really cool because at night, in the middle of the night, midnight, you can go to every farmer's house is lit up because they're all working on this. Yes.
There's a comment, my tea leaves dance on top of the water, a delightful effervescence.
Hey, I like that. Oh my gosh. And this reminds me, I failed again. Okay, I might as well raise my hand. And I just said I failed again. I had said that I was going to answer Peter's question, and somehow, so here's the promise. Peter, if I don't answer this question next week, then you're going to get an ounce of something free. So this will give me real big incentive to get to the physics question. So yes, the leaves are dancing on the top of the water. For which reason, I don't know. Let's say it again so that I remember to attack this question. And yes, it gives you that effervescent feeling. And the other thing you should be noting, wait a minute, you're not brewing the tea yet. You shouldn't be noting anything. Well, the other thing I'm noting is there's a nice aroma. Yes.
There's a clarification maybe that helpful question on the question above, but does the terrain, example steep or rolling area, if at all, factor into the farmer's decision to process the leaves as green versus any other style?
Oh, that's a different question, and I love this question. So, questioner is really asking, does terrain affect what style you pick as a farmer to process your tea? And the answer to that is not really. So let me get into that a little bit, and then we'll enter the quality arena. You've seen the terrain for many places. So the Wuyi Mountains, you see it's very mountainous. The decision to process as some type really seems to be driven by local palate. That's one thing. And secondly, by what's in the soil. Now, that seems like a silly answer. So I need to clarify. What do I mean by what's in the soil? In the Wuyi Mountains, this is an easy answer. You taste it. When it's done as green, you still get a great flavor. But over time, the farmers there said, maybe we can do better if we roast this. So lineage-wise, they were doing it as green, but once the emperor in the Ming Dynasty, the founder said, hey, we're not going to do tea cakes anymore. That opened the door to experiment. By the way, it opened the door all throughout China to experiment. And yet, in this area, because the flavor was already still so appreciated as is, they kept it as green. They didn't experiment out of that. Terrain doesn't have a direct influence when you just use the word terrain. However, if you use the word terroir with the implication of what's in the soil, and this is a little complicated because it assumes, oh, the farmer can see what's in the soil. Of course they can't, but they can taste what's in the soil. And if it tastes good with the green tea process, I'm sure there are farmers during the 1400s, 1500s, and 1600s experiment with all sorts of things. Here, they kept it as green tea. Let's enter the quality arena. That was a great question, though. It was a very thought-provoking question. All right, quality arena. We see this beautiful, beautiful color. Light green is how I would characterize it. As I look in there, trichomes all over the place. And let's go ahead and enter. No, you're not entering. I'm going to go ahead and enter. And what I'm looking for is astringency. Where is it in my mouth? Aftertaste and energetics. Here I go. Well, there's lots to talk about. There is astringency. I'm clear about it. There's an aftertaste. And there's some energetics in this thing too. This is very talkative tea. I'm gonna try again. Aroma and taste to be emphasized here. Yeah, there's all those things. Lots of aroma, lots of taste going on with this. It's your turn to brew, and then we'll discuss this. So the other thing while you're getting this ready, and again, I'm going back to this question about does look and feel of terrain, which is really what the question seems to be. Does look and feel of terrain have an influence on the farmer's decision making about what style? And the very firm answer is no. However, over time, it can have an influence as the farmer begins to feel, well, maybe I can develop a new varietal because I want to accent this or accent that. Remembering again, most of these are lineage teas. There's another aspect to this. The deeper I fall into this, the more I realize there is to talk about. There's the aspect of culture. If you're in a conservative culture, you're not going to make changes, or whatever changes you make will be small and incremental. If you're in a place where there's more things happening in the culture that are changing how you think about things, you're open to make changes. So why did I put it that way? Because let's go back to the Woolly Mountains. See, I always find a way to turn the cliff tea. Let's go back to the Woolly Mountains. There's really a reason for this. Who lived there again? Let's see, let me think. Oh, yeah. You had Taoists, you had Buddhists, you had Confucianists. And what's special about those guys? They're all, working on philosophy, aren't they? And by the way, you're supposed to be doing it. Sorry, I'm supposed to be walking you through it. And somehow I distracted myself. So you heated the cups just like the tea master demonstrated. Use 175-degree water. Use bag number 3 labeled Undergrowth. Put it in the heated cup. I've sped through this, but you did this in a tea rhythm. And now you're Stevie. Oh, and I put the time on. Of course, I remembered to do that. Okay. Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucianist, all living in harmony. Well, let's think first about the Taoist. What's special about those guys? What's special is they, in quotes, are the scientists of old China. And they're always experimenting with things. So they're experimenting. And within, because they're growing tea too. Buddhists are growing tea up there. They're experimenting because they're communicating with temples from all over China. Hey, you know, down here, south of here, here's what we do with the tea. Hey, up here in the north, we do that with the tea. So there's exchange of knowledge pushing things forward. Some places like this were very impoverished and they didn't have that rich wealth of thinking about maybe we should do this and maybe we should do that. And so it was more traditional. Yes.
Jeremy says, I have a cold, so no sense of aroma, but delight in the appearance of leaves, so consistently rolled and in the dancing in the water. Front of mouth astringency, warming to the core, comfortable. Easy swallow, perfect for coping with a cold.
Oh, okay. So Jeremy starts us out. She has a cold, and yet it's warming. There is astringency in the front and back, right? Okay, of the mouth, and
Or the front of the mouth.
front of the mouth. I'm sorry, and just this. It's easy to drink when you have a cold, and it's comforting as you have a cold. Great start. I mean, some things you think of like a blanket. So usually when you have a cold, and so things like this fit that category. Things like white tea also fit that category. Great catch.
Peter, going out on a limb here, which likely will break off. It feels like the tea is tipping me toward a warming, but still hints of cooling to at the same time. So I'm guessing to guess it's aged, but not too aged.
Great comment. Yeah, Peter, this shows that he pays attention week to week. Yes, it is aged, but you're also right. It's not too aged. So this is the speciality. You drink this tea. Jeremy noted the warming quality. Peter notes the warming quality. Wait a minute. This is green tea. And he also notes a cooling quality along in with that. And I find that especially in the aftertaste, there's a cooling quality. Yes, that's the exact way to understand this tea. It is aged. It is green. It's less aged than Emerald Gates. So it's not as warming as Emerald Gates. Great catch. Limb is still intact. All right, you have successfully brewed. Now it's time for you to enter the quality arena. And this is really one of my most favorite times of all the sessions because you all are so experienced. You're able to catch subtleties. You're able to ask really, really penetrating questions. It's very nice. And as you're thinking about it, remembering that those pictures, and I want to emphasize this because where you saw us on those pictures was already precarious, wasn't easy to get to. But where they had to go to get this, way the heck up the mountain, very isolated area, and they had actually built a very simple building up there so that they could, in that area, harvest, put in the building while they continued to harvest, have other workers come up and take it down. So, and if we had been allowed to go up there, it probably would have taken us about 90 minutes to get up there, an hour to 90 minutes to get up there. Just steep and all sorts of opportunities for accidents to occur. And that's why we didn't take people up there. The other thing that Jeremy noted in her first comment, and I forgot to reinforce this, this tea really is about aesthetics as well. And I don't mean so much the aesthetics in the water. There are grades of this tea. You have special, you have grades 1, 2, and 3. And this tea is specifically designated as a gift tea. And what I mean, and that's at the central government level. They are allowed to use this tea as a gift to other dignitaries. Anytime you have a gift tea, it better look pretty uniform. You know, the leaders don't want to look down in there and say, oh, gosh, this doesn't look aesthetically appealing. Not good. And while you're thinking this through, this whole area, and I would say within 100-mile radius, produces any number of famous teas, including Wong's Creation, Premier's Choice, the Yellow Mountain Reserve. I mean, tea after tea comes from this total area. And scientists have worked, by the way, on differing elevations. I was looking at an article this week about the catechins and the apparent effect of elevations and L-theanine, the apparent effect of that. And so they've done a preliminary study and it's looking as follows, that at around 2,000 feet of elevation, it seems to be a sweet spot for catechin accumulation. Nobody can explain why. And this research took place late last year. So I know they're working, trying to figure out, okay, what is it about the 2,000 foot above sea level elevation that causes that? When you go higher, close to 3,000, it seems to concentrate the L-theanine. They don't know why. But the reason I'm bringing these inconclusive studies up is because it shows you the Chinese tea scientists are looking at all these factors. And it's kind of like a race. Every week, I look at the articles related to the tea we're doing. And every week there's something new. And it's really fascinating because they're trying to get to this place where they understand how it all fits together. And then the next step is, how does it make us better overall? Yeah.
The scent is clean and round. The taste has a wet astringency followed by round, subtle flavors.
Taste is clean and round. I love this comment. Why do I love this comment? Well, it happens to be true. But the other real reason I love this comment is in China, they would say that. Clean and round. That clean is how they would say it. Sometimes they use a synonym, clarity. Yeah.
Is this your favorite green tea?
Oh, who asked that?
Jonathan.
Okay. What a great question. Is this my favorite green tea? Well, knowing me as well as you all do, and knowing that, and you see this when children enter the shop, doesn't matter who the children are, I end up loving them, right? So yes, it is among my children a very special child, but it's not my favorite. There can't be a favorite child. This is another special child. I do love this tea though. Green tea is a different animal to me than, say, a cliff tea. Cliff teas it's a little bit easier for me to categorize where I am in terms of, wow, this is, X number. Green tea, there's more, surprisingly more subtle differentiation. So you get something like this. This is so different from heirloom. You get something like this in heirloom. Hey, what about Chara? Oh, yeah, that's really good too. Hey, Wong's creation. So there's every time you start to think about, am I in love with this? Well, wait a minute. Here are all these other ones that are coming to mind. Yes.
To push you a little further on that previous question, there was a comment from an experienced father, I have a favorite child. And so I think the hope is maybe you could choose yours as well.
I am so happy that an experienced father is on this broadcast, and I'm sure that I will learn from this experienced father. So I'll consider that. And of course, I'll take your suggestions on how you choose your favorite child, and maybe I can apply those. This, no matter what, is a great tea. The thing that I haven't heard yet in terms of a underlying flavor profile that I detect is a hint of fruity / floral. This thing, and it's subtle, but it's in there. And we had somebody come in this week, speaking of this week's news, brand new person, said, here's my girlfriend. Okay, nice to meet your girlfriend. She loves tea. He didn't finish the second part, and I don't. He didn't need to, because got the girlfriend all squared away. And oh, you know what? This was a date situation. That's right. This was a date situation. But clear that he was in here for the date, not the tea. And she said, well, I like two things. And he said, well, you get one of those things and I'll get the other thing. And the other thing he ended up with was green tea. And you could tell that there was resistance. But, he's on a date. And therefore, it's not good manners to demonstrate resistance. And enthusiastically, yes, I'll do that. Here's what happened by the end. They were all friendly by the end. So that's part of the story we can put to bed, so to speak. The thing that was surprising was he stopped and he said, green tea is always bitter. How did this happen that this is not bitter? I mean, I was kind of looking around for the sugar and so forth when I came in. And he said, this doesn't need it. This is a tribute to what green tea is supposed to be. If any of your friends are telling you, green tea is terrible, it's bitter, they need re-education. And you are all qualified to offer re-education. Yes.
Some more commentary. The astringency is like carbonation that masks the sweet flavor underneath in a soda.
Oh, what a really great comment. The astringency is like carbonation in soda, which masks the sweet flavor. The astringency, the implication is it's masking the floral / fruity slight sweet flavor here. Great comment. This is true. And this is why we go through this routine. Because once you go through the routine, you're present and you get down into it. Great comment. Yeah.
This is a fun one. I'm thinking that China's tea culture is almost like an ancient cultural membrane, embracing the spiritual, bureaucratic, scientific, and most importantly, the farmers, the magicians of the soil and process.
Oh, I love this comment. Wow. The farmers, the magicians of the soil. And the comment's much greater than that, because It implies a long heritage. It implies a deep and rich culture. I'll tell you, this is an A+ comment because the farmers, when you think about it, especially with the philosophical traditions that some of the farmers participated in, really were magicians. They didn't have the tools that farmers have today. What tools do farmers have today? They got scientists. Scientists come down and they have lineage books. When they were first doing these teas, they didn't have lineage books. They were making it up as they went. And by the way, when this tea was first done, it was steamed, of course, rather than pan fried. And to this day, there are a few farmers who still steam. We don't have any of the steam stuff in here. Not because we don't want it or don't like it. We've just never found the right one, which should be in here. But we're fascinated by the fact that even that still comes through. Great comment. That was a rich comment. Yes.
I am not generally a green tea fan, but the floral hints here make this one work for me.
Hey, there you go. You should go on a date. Oh, wait a minute. Let me take that back. Yes, the floral hints here are allowing this individual to actually appreciate green tea. And the green teas in here, by and large, if you're present, just well, and by the way, okay, let's back up one more time. Understanding the quality versus liking are two different things. I understand the quality of every single tea in here, and I understand why it should be on the board. The liking aspect, there is naturally as humans, we tend to end up liking one thing a little bit more than another. But appreciating that underneath layer of what makes something good is what you're all doing. I love that you're expressing that. All right. As usual, oh, we're early today. I love early. As usual, I get schooled by experts, and I love the commentary. And today was particularly rich and varied, and I love that. What do we have facing us the next 3 weeks? It's a really good question. Let me think a minute. You know, we have a lot of dog lovers in here. And so maybe we should do something like charm, you know, the dog constellation. Maybe that's what we should do next week. And we have animal lovers. So how about the week following? Maybe we should do peacock tongues. That sounds like it could be an interesting session. And, you know, this crew is always so clean and always in such good rhythm. And in fact, they're unblemished. Those are the 3 T's over the next 3 weeks that we're going to do. I hope you've taken really good notes for these first 3 weeks, because the 3 T's you're going to taste over the next 3 weeks are different, but they're still within the green tea. And we usually think of the green tea as very narrow. It's narrower than the cliff teas, but it's not very narrow. It's still a nice channel for exploration and beautiful experiences. Your beautiful experience upcoming, you have 2 of them. One is to continue to send good, or not good, excellent psychic wishes to Terry. Second thing is for you to be in the health rhythm this week, to be healthy. We'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.